Hi, meeting is being recorded, February 7th, 2024, SIG Automation. So, yeah, so what I pointed out changes that made things very difficult for us this time around was the new catalog, putting everything in one place, but it uses a directory structure, which kind of complicated the way tags worked. And yeah, but we managed to release the catalog fully tagged. So that means anybody using anything in the catalog right now will use version 2.0.0 of all the packages. However, we're also switching it back to use main for development, and we're going to talk in the SIG release meeting what to do moving forward. I suggested that we have a stable branch where everything is tagged, and that's what people should use in the examples. But developers should use the main branch, which is untagged, and just use the latest version of packages, right? So yeah, we'll discuss that moving forward. But that was kind of complicated at the last minute to figure out. And thanks, John, for jumping in and helping us with the tagging aspects. Documentation is still a little bit of work in progress. Where I think maybe tomorrow I'll meet with Gergely and try to figure out the new house for the documentation with Netify. Timo is also coordinating this. And yeah, but we did it. We did it. So congrats everybody for a lot of the hard work. We're like a month plus over the time that was given, and that's a big problem. And it's one of the issues that I put on the agenda to discuss. How do we avoid this next time? But yeah.
So Tal, I wanted to do a retrospective together. Just not that. Probably, if you don't mind, probably we can dedicate that meeting in a SIG release or next SIG automation meeting. Release have a few things I captured, like based on our meetings. So I think probably in the same meeting we can figure out the delays and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I put a list here of, I guess, some, I think, very urgent items to discuss. And I suggested we go over the future topics here because there are a whole bunch of other items that were put here over time, and they're also worth looking at, right? Some things are just higher priority than others. So I thought maybe we can make a list of potential agenda items moving forward, and yeah, and decide together how we're going to handle it. So I would suggest that the very first item that we need to talk about is Porch, right? The big change is that Porch is no longer part of KEPT, no longer a CNCF project. It is ours 100%. It is now copyright and FEO authors, and this is the new home for it. John is here. I think I know we've talked about this many times, but John, I wonder if you can say a few words about what this means right now for people who aren't on top of this conversation. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what it means is that we can adapt it to be exactly what we need. So, like, I put together a roadmap in. So what we did, I think most people are probably familiar, but maybe not everybody. So I'll just take 1 minute. We pulled all the code out of KEPT for Porch, put it into the Nefio Porch repository. We put together a new Porch CTL CLI tool that basically is the same as KEPT Alpha, our package, and KEPT Alpha repo. And it includes all the same commands. They work exactly the same way. It's all the same code. It's just all strung together a little different with a different command line name. And so we still use KEPT for packaging, but it's purely client side now, and it's purely optional, frankly. Like we need the KEPT file, but we can also move away from that. So in the discussions, I think it's number 450 or something, I have a Porch roadmap where I talk about ideas that Cal and Wim and others and I have all discussed over the last year. But it's up to this community to decide how to carry that forward, what to do with that. And so, that's my sort of summary of what I think we should do. But that, we have to sort of all decide together. So there's certain pieces right now we still have to sort out. Like we have a bunch of kept functions that we use, or KRM functions really, that we're using right now that are built built and managed by the kept team. We should decide. I know Wim was working on some things when we talked last that might kind of eliminate the need for using some of those functions. So like we just have to sort of revisit this idea and kind of come up with a plan forward that works best for Nephew. In the internals of Porch, like
John, do you happen to have a link to that roadmap that you can share? We'll
it's
put it
like
in the agenda. Yeah, if you can find it.
yeah, no, it's Nephew project
It's in the
discussions.
GitHub discussions. Yeah, I can take a look at while you talk. John,
Okay.
why don't you continue talking? I'll figure out where the link is.
Yeah, I just, in that roadmap, I just talk about some, so the way Porch works today, just like to give, I guess, maybe to give some information on how to proceed. The way Porch works today is it has a server that fronts the Git repos, and it keeps an internal cache of the contents of those Git repos. And any edits through the Porch API kind of have to go through that cache. And so one of the things I did late last year was fix some concurrency issues and other things. But really, that internal architecture kind of sucks. I mean, it was fine for a first attempt, but like if you look at the roadmap, it's too tightly bound to Git, in my opinion. Even though you can use OCI, it's too tightly bound to trying to maintain a consistent model within Git or within the backend storage. I would rather we loosen that and we instead use an ordinary CRDs, and they become, when we publish, we basically create a package variant, not package, a package revision directly that's just a pointer into the underlying data store, like a commit or whatever. I think that would be a simpler API. It would fit better. We wouldn't need the aggregated API server for very much at all, which adds complexity, the aggregated API server. So anyway, you can see that in the roadmap. We can have a longer discussion about the details of it there or live, but yeah, it's really open for whatever the community needs.
So thank you. Yeah, I think I'm just organizing the topics right now. I think we'll eventually have to deep dive quite a bit into this, and I think do a few looks at also alternatives, right? My overarching concern is the Nephew community's ability to turn Porch into something production worthy. And I think we have to decide together how we tackle it. And if it can't quite do that, then maybe the idea is that this is a reference implementation that comes with Nephew, and the expectation that in production environments something else would be used. But if that's the case, then we need to figure out how that story would even work, right? It's a very big topic, right? And it's not just a SIG automation issue. I think a TSC issue as well as a SIG1 issue too, right? As we're trying to build WIM, the whole discussion about the components for SIG1. Well, if we're using an emergent kind of model of these are the components we're using right now, Porch really defines the whole structure of Nephew, right, in terms of architecture. So yeah, I think this will be many sessions, not just one, I think. But thank you for all that. We have John today. Does anybody have questions or something for John? His time is very valuable, so he's not always available.
So one question, obvious. So John, one, obviously we really missed you in R2. So So going forward, would we continue to miss you, or we don't want to miss you?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm actually, it seems like, it was tough, but R1 was tough too. And like, I'm really impressed, and really was great to see how everybody pulled together. And like, I was really, really happy to see the community get this release out. And it's a big accomplishment. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to participate more. Things have been pretty hectic. So I'm super laser focused right now on some Kubernetes things. Um, I will, like, I'm here today. I will try to attend these meetings if I'm useful. And so long as I continue to be useful, I'll try to attend these meetings. I don't know how much time beyond that I will have, but you can always reach out to me on Slack and stuff. And if I suspect over time I will become less and less useful to you, because the project moves on with its own changes, and my context not being involved quite as much won't be as accurate anymore. But while I'm still useful, I absolutely will be here as much as possible. So I guess that's where does
Yeah.
that answer your question, Bala?
Yeah.
I won't be able to jump in like I did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Not not the one I wanted to hear, but anyway, you answered it. So my question is, if we were to do the purge, would you be able to continue to guide that, or?
I absolutely can guide that. Yes. I don't know that I will have much time to do.
Implementation would have to at least support a gather of two.
So I think did we lose him? Or is
Actual
just
code like I did at the end of last year.
okay?
Can you not hear me?
Yeah.
For a second, you were gone.
For a second, we lost you.
Oh, all right. Yeah, it says unstable network connection. Yeah. So what I was saying is that I will absolutely be available to help guide that work. I won't necessarily be able to do much contribution. Like last year, I spent last December, I spent a fair bit of time migrating that over and working through issues in Porch and things like that. I won't be able to commit that kind of time, but I will be able to help guide others and advise and kind of like give my thoughts anyway, for whatever they're worth, on how to proceed with it. But yeah, I definitely I'll be available to work with you on that.
Okay, cool. Thanks, John. Yeah. Yeah, Fiacre, go ahead. You have your hands raised. Yeah.
But yeah, very quick one. But in terms of the moving of Porch, is that a hard cutover from the kept Porch? So is it gone from the kept project
It's not
completely,
gone
or
yet, but it's not
no?
gone yet. But right, once they have assurances that we don't need what they have anymore, then they'll move forward with removing that. Now,
Okay.
there are certain things I had to do because choices were made internally when Porch was written to rely on things in kept that are in internal Go modules, which are not accessible. I had to copy a few bits and pieces that otherwise I wouldn't have wanted to copy.
Mm.
So it should be 100. Like, we should be able to. We do have to, there is a dependency. There's a dependency, but there shouldn't be a dependency on anything in the Porch directory. Dependencies on the core kept APIs and things. And then I had to copy some things that were in internal Go modules because they weren't. There was one really, when code is all done in the same repo, people make mistakes. And one of the mistakes was that there's a public API, and exported, right, capitalized Go API, but as a parameter, it takes an internal Go struct, right? So there was like no way to,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's just a mistake that the tooling didn't pick up because it was all in the same repo or whatever, but are all in the same higher module. But anyway, so I had to copy a few things and do a few little unsavory bits and pieces, but nothing terrible. And we should be able to, that team should be able to move forward and take the whole porch directory effectively out of,
Right.
um,
Yeah, I
of
guess
kept.
that yeah, I guess that kind of leads into the next question. Like in terms of the say the kept book, for instance, like the documentation still has a lot of stuff in relation to Porch that would probably have to go. But the original, so could we? Maybe your time is precious. So would the original dev team, are they still involved in kind of that area, or could they be? I know some of the issues that are coming in are being moved over to us, rightly so. But is there some of the
Uh,
original dev team there that could maybe be
yeah, I can sync up
throw questions at her?
with I can sync up with Morton and who would be the primary, and Justin, um, and make sure. I mean, it's yeah. So
We can sort that out. Yeah, we can. But yeah,
yeah.
it'd be good if it'd be good if we had someone. Yeah,
I'll definitely be able to help you, like, and look at your code and do reviews and things like that. Like
cool, cool,
that's fine. It's just I probably can't sit down and like start writing code. I don't think I'll have time for that.
cool. Thanks, John.
Wim, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think on the topic itself, I mean, first of all, I think Ports helped us. So for me, it was good to have it. I mean, the lessons we have learned, if we wouldn't have it, we would not have learned, or we would not have gotten the knowledge that we have right now, right? So from that point of view, I think it's a great tool. Now there are a few things that I believe we should change, right? But basically going completely overboard. I mean, I am in the process of rewriting pieces of it, because of the fact that mainly because of the NF2 infra stuff. So for example, there's a few things that I am doing right now that are changing. So in other words, the pipeline is completely decoupled from ports. So the pipeline
That's
is
in my
gone.
roadmap too.
So
Yeah,
there's basically no
absolutely.
cap. So you could basically inject any pipeline could run. Okay.
Right.
So in other words, so that's one big change. The other big change that I'm doing is that every package, so today we merge them all together, right? And the main, right? So what I'm doing is a package is lives on its own. So today, one of the problems we have, in my view, with the way that we structure the repo is because when we approve, we merge to main, right? The problem is we create a big dependency tree all over the place. If you want, so what I'm doing is basically every package is kind of is a branch on its own, and it lives on its own. You can approve, you can delete, you can do anything you want with it. And that helps a lot of, I changed a lot of the dependency, even the interaction with config sync or Argo or something like that. So you basically, so we have all this issue with the fact that we put them all into a single repo and stuff like that. So it solves a bunch of these issues.
So
But
Wim,
the base concept remains. I mean, so I also changed, for example, like you said, so it's still the aggregate API server, but stored in etcd, John, because of the fact that we need the approval permissions, which are segregated, right?
You
And if
need the
you
sub resource, which isn't supported in this area.
so that's why it's not purely a CRD at the moment. But that's a detail in my view. The two fundamental thing for me is basically removing the pipeline from the whole equation, and second is to the backend, because it still uses Git, but then you can use any backend. So basically you can put a database, you can put Git. It doesn't really matter because these are all independent components at the end of the day. There is
so Wim, it seems like both of us are working similarly here. So let's because I have exactly a proposal that does that, right? The TKO completely changes how you do specialization, right? It also no longer has a pipeline and also uses alternative backends, right? By default, it uses Postgres for everything. So let's yeah, I didn't want to delve into all of that right now, but let's plan to have a few sessions where we propose and look at alternatives. I think one alternative is we keep Porch and we modify it. Another thing I think which is worth looking at that a few people have mentioned is let's examine the alternatives, right? We know that they're not aligned with Porch exactly. The question is, could we add a layer or a component to say integrate with them, right? And
Yeah,
think
might
about
be
what
able to duplicate so to me, package variant and package variant separate are kind of two of the core things.
Yeah.
And you might be able to replicate very similar, if not identical, similar behavior on top of something else. I think that there's a lot in what Wim was just saying, and I know, Tal, you've got some ideas. So like, I guess maybe to just sort of give my philosophy on these things is everything we're doing is all just a rough draft. We've talked about that before, and we learn from it, and then we decide how to move forward. And so I don't get too attached to code these days. But I do want the ideas that we've learned to be, which I think we've learned, like Wim was saying, a ton, and we've evolved our ideas a lot over the last year. And those should be carried forward, that learning as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both Wim and I think I agree with Wim 100%. Like yeah, my proposal is based on what we have, not something out of the blue. Anyway, thank you for that discussion. This is just the beginning of discussion. Again, this is not the agenda item for today. Rather, it's the plan to plan, right? Because I think this is pretty big. So I would suggest taking this topic moving forward. We can have maybe a series of presentations about this. I can present something about, some of my alternatives. I wonder if somebody wants to take a deeper look at Argo, Flux, and see how they relate to us as potential alternatives. With Argo, I imagine somebody from Red Hat, Bala, would be a good, because you guys have a lot of experience with Argo. Maybe something like, I'm imagining a presentation to the community, how Argo addresses some of the deployment issues that Nefio does, but in a different way. So all of us can kind of look at it and think what it means for us. Bala, does that make sense, Vish?
Yeah, I think Vish may not be on the call.
Okay.
Yes, I think I can definitely take a discussion internally and get back to you on that.
Okay, and
Yeah.
Fikra, somebody from your group maybe who has experience with Flux, I wonder if there's somebody who can. So I know Flux is quite different, but all of these are quite different. They take different stabs in the same topic area.
But what one fundamental difference between Porch and other GitOps, I mean, Porch is not a GitOps, but generally saying, is Porch can do a multiplex effect from Git to Git. I don't think any other tool does that.
Yeah, so
Well,
the problem, I think what the difference in my view also is that Porch has the ability to write back, whereas the others are only read.
right, but it's that's absolutely true. But the question is, could we use their mechanisms and create some sort of extra component or something that we join into, right? Because these are ecosystems, right? There are a lot of Argo extensions, a lot of Flux extensions. So there's a possibility that Nefio could own a specific extension, a specialization extension, something like that for something else, right? So yeah, I'm just throwing out ideas here. I'm not proposing anything. I'm saying that we need more data points, right? Some of us know these projects more than others. Not everybody here in the group knows Porch very well either, right? It's a pretty complex little engine. So yeah.
To bring maybe an unpleasant topic up, like given WeaveWorks announcement, I know Flux is open source, but does that factor in? And I know the folks from Ericsson have done a lot with Flux. We're investors in WeaveWorks, so I don't know whether we need to talk about that here, but like it probably should be a consideration in these kind of things as well.
Yeah.
Um,
By the way, WeaveWorks is going out of business. That was something.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I should have said that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, but there's a lot of thoughts about what that could mean for the open source project.
Right. There's still a big community for Flux. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of these are considerations, right? And it could be that the best alternative would be that we keep something of our own. yeah, I just think it makes sense for all of us to examine the alternatives and make an informed decision moving forward. And even that can change in the future, right? Let's say, I'm just throwing out an example, Porch could be Argo based for a couple of years, and then in the future, Argo's future isn't unclear and FEO moves to something else, right? As long as we stabilize the core concepts of how you interact with FEO, which is KRM based, how that's implemented behind the scenes doesn't have to matter for users too much, right? Yeah, my perspective has always been, as you said, this is a draft. I think the other important word is reference implementation, right? When you go to download our code, nobody is expecting here for this to be production ready right now, right? This is an example of how you can use Nefio. When you productize Nefio, I expect people to use something far more robust than some of the tooling that we have. Right? And that could mean replacing Porch or whatever it is with some hardened orchestrator underneath, right? Anyway, we've talked quite a bit about this topic. If you guys can see the screen, are there other sub notes to add in terms of how we want to tackle Porch? Another line item you would want to add here to consider?
Yeah, the thing is, it will take quite a bit of time, is my view,
Yeah,
to flush it out. Given this is not, but that's why, that's why I started to basically write code rather than just conceptually think about it.
Yeah, me
Because
too, yeah.
the only way you can find it out is by really trying to implement, and probably it will be not full-fledged, but once you have enough confidence that this is going to be it, or that this could help, then that's what helps you, right? So that's the bit of a challenge, is that there's so much going on. To make a decision here, it's going to be not so easy.
I agree. This is why I was trying to break it down to line items here. I don't want us to have just one session where we talk and decide. I don't think that's possible. So, and also I don't want it to occupy like 2 months of just discussing that, right? It's pretty clear that R3 will continue having Porch, right? I just don't see us being able to, even if we wanted to change, we won't be able to do it that quickly. So this is more of discussing for the future, but we do have to start discussing right now, I think. So the idea is, yeah, let's break it up into items, and maybe the agenda for the coming months, some of these will pop in, but I don't want us to focus just on that. I really want our agenda to include other things we need to talk about. There's just too much to discuss, right?
Yeah, so I know two hands are raised, but I need to drop to run to another meeting. So one thing, call out of the agenda, how do we avoid Aarti crunch? We can discuss in a retrospective, I think.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, I'll look at the recording. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bella. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Yeah, thank you.
Fikra, go ahead.
Just quickly, in terms of for those who don't know Porch that well, could we have a session maybe on what the limitations are, what we're trying to address, in terms of the shortcomings of Porch? That might be helpful.
You could do something like that next week. This week is not good, but next week sometime you probably do that. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
just in terms of the limitations, or like why do we, what's the
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the reason I laid out the roadmap, I think we could do a ton with it. The things I want to do are like improvements in the way it works based on our experience over the last year, right? And like we know, so honestly, like I think it's a great thing to move forward with. Like folks were saying, it does certain things that others don't, and I think the roadmap lays out a nice solution. But yeah, let's plan a session for sometime next week.
okay,
perfect.
thank you, John.
Thank you.
I added another item here to the agenda. So one thing SIG1 did fairly productively is, SIG1 organized itself into 5 work groups, and there are many more meetings. So SIG1 has a flurry of activity. We have our own task forces, and I wonder if, as we tackle things moving forward, it might be worthwhile adding more meetings. Now, as soon as I'm saying this, I'm already regretting it because my calendar is just packed with all these meetings for different topics. But I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there as an option that we have. It might be impossible, right? I think maybe SIG1 has already occupied all the spaces that people have left, and we just have to focus on this. But we can do that. I think it just means we need to be very disciplined with our agenda, right? And moving forward and use our time very effectively if we only have one meeting a week. And maybe move more things to Slack, right? That could be handled there. So in terms of ongoing development. So yeah, I don't have answers to this. This is the meeting where we talk about the agenda generally, right? Okay, I think we have a nice list of items for Porch. Wim, do you want to say
I wanted
something?
to.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I wanted to add one thing because Liam has sent one note in quickly is like yesterday there was a meeting which wanted to do some extensions for policy control in ports during the package stuff. So I told them we should wait for these type of things until we have port sorted out. I don't know whether you guys agree, but I kind of said to the people, if you ask me, don't do this right now because this is going to add more. We should not add features, but rather fix the fundamentals first before we tackle that. So everything that is just using it as is, that's okay, right? But if we want to change stuff, I'm trying to say no for now. But I just wanted to share or say that I did that. I'm not sure whether you guys agree, but
Yeah,
that's what I think about.
thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I don't entirely agree actually, because I think it's possible to do POCs, even if things are evolving and moving. So I'm a strong believer in POCs, right? So POCs
Yeah,
tend
but
to
I
come
mean,
and go. Right?
but adding capabilities whereas we have to sort out the base, right? So that's where I'm a bit saying no to.
Okay.
Or
Yeah. Well, it could be something very hacky, right? So even though the
yeah,
base
but
is
okay, but what's the point, right, of doing something that is going to be changed going forward? So that's I think my personal view is that let's put our effort which benefits all of us at the end of the day, rather than just trying to do some small thing. But okay, yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yep. I guess it's up to that work group to discuss. So are you asking maybe some of us here to also join the work group and help the effort there?
No, I just share. I mean, I don't need necessarily. I just said what I did. I try to avoid changes into word ports for release 3 at the moment, and then we can see what we do going forward. But yeah, that's my view. But I just wanted to share because I don't think too many people were there from SIG.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were very busy with the release. Liam, you had your hand up for a while and took it down. Is it?
Yeah, I thought we were allowed, just talking moving on from Flux, and I was just wondering more about how we triage things for or she. I think maybe that's just the second last bullet there. We'll come onto that. Okay.
How will I phrase this?
It's not really a porch thing. It's more. Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's something else. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's so many more, I think, high-level discussions of what we're trying to do, right? We throw out words like automation, orchestration, CI/CD, right? We're kind of covering very large fields, entire industries, right, in themselves here, right? And I think different people have a different idea how all of this fits in, right? I, for example, am very opposed to the CI/CD GitOps approach. Right? I think what we're doing, my understanding is that we're doing automation, large scale automation, right? There are people who come from the orchestration background and have this more ideas of workflows and components that connect to each other, hierarchies of orchestrators. I think ORAM comes with that perspective. Yeah, I think there's a place to take a more high level look at what each tool is really, what its philosophy is, and not just, because Argo versus Flux versus Porch are not just overlapping in features, but they have different opinions and philosophies of what exactly they're trying to solve in the general area. Yeah, I don't know if we need a whole session just discussing that, but I think it's something we keep in the back of our mind when we're doing such comparisons, right? You know, John's team created Porch not because not invented here philosophy, but because there was really a gap in what was going on in terms of orchestrating Nephio at a large scale, right? It does things that absolutely Argo, or it tries to do things, let me put it that way, that Argo and Flux just don't address, right? Because Argo is a CI/CD tool, and Flux, more difficult for me to explain, but it's more in line with what ConfigSync does, maybe. But also not exactly, because it has interesting features like the Helm controller. And yeah, these are the way DevOps tends to work. There are people who solve problems. I used to be DevOps. You solve problem with tools, right? It's very problem focused. So the overall philosophy tends to emerge rather than be like, here's what I want to do with everything. You have all this assemblage of tools, and then you try to unite them, and hey, look, here's a philosophy. And then they slap a name on it, something like GitOps. Hey, here's a name for a philosophy, right? So yeah, anyway, I'm rambling on a bit, but yeah, let's keep that in mind, Liam. That's a good point. And we'll try to put that as signpost on the way in our discussion, to see how that figures in the big picture.
That really
Okay.
wasn't my question at all.
Oh, okay, sorry. I took your point and
No, I thought we were finished with the Porch, so I was wondering how we were going to do triage and in general for items for our
our
trade.
CICD. Okay.
Yeah,
Not
not CICD triage. So if we're going to have we're going to have a pos of things that people want to do, and for our tree, and this is probably more to do with your second last bullet there. How do we avoid another tree crunch?
Amazing,
So, I mean,
amazing how I misheard triage as CICD. Okay.
yeah. So it's more to do with matching the ambition to the resources. Kind of project planning 101.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot of this has to do with. So we have 2 points here. The next 2 points that I put in is one is interacting with SIG 1, and the other might be related to SIG 3, right? So Wim raised the point of, how do we deal with all this new stuff coming from SIG 1 right now? And stuff that they need from us. They need us to be there at those meetings to give them, they're constantly asking us to respond and provide feedback for the plans. And Wim, myself, and others are trying. There's just a lot there. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of meetings just generally. But then there's the other part where that Liam is mentioning, that how do we, and Fikra mentioned too, the pain points during the R2 process. I think all of us were frustrated at some point by how everything works or doesn't work. Right? Our processes are in place. Sometimes they work against us. Sometimes they're unclear, and sometimes they're plain broken. So I think that's part of the retrospective that, yeah, mentioned above here. So maybe I'll yeah, move things around a bit. But yeah, I think let's use the time in SIG 3 to discuss this. I think SIG 2 just has a lot of other stuff to talk about. Does that make sense, Liam?
Yeah, but I think actually we also have some very urgent things coming from SIG 2 that have to be on the list, like the NF onboarding time and other things. Like
Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. I would call this well, yeah. Those are some big things. So we do have a separate SDK meeting, right? We kind of borrowed a SIG 1 slot for that, but I think with Stephen leading that, I think that's where the onboarding discussion happens, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we have a space to discuss that already.
Yes.
It might bleed into this meeting too, of course, but I think I'm glad that we have that extra space, because that's just a lot to tackle, right? Okay. By the way, people feel free to jump in. Meanwhile, I'll just continue going through the list of futures. I took a look at it already. we have some bigger things and smaller things. There are some bigger things, we talked about, do we need to do testing better? We discussed this a few times. There's a note here that John could invite people from Google to maybe.
Well, I think that was because the whole mocks versus fakes thing.
Yeah.
People with opinions on that. I'm not sure who those people are. It's funny, like every week they post, like in the bathroom, they post a little thing about like, tips on coding or whatever. Like, and this week it's like, don't use mocks, use fakes instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. So I would really love it if somebody in this group could take leadership on this issue. Help us organize some look at different approaches, maybe give us a presentation on what they are, and we can decide together on some sort of unified
I
approach.
think that this was somewhat decided and they implemented a bunch of mocking stuff. Like the only thing, if I read that tips thing, it basically says, well, mocks aren't real implementations, so they might not catch everything. So if you can have a fake, like for example, an in-memory database, so you don't need a dependency on a real database, use that. So like use SQLite as a fake database backend instead of requiring Postgres, right? Like that would be like what a fake is. And so that makes sense to me, but you can't always do that. So like in that case, we fall back to mocks, and I don't see a problem with that. That's my Liam.
Yeah.
You I think did a lot of work on this area, right? So like,
I did. Yeah. So I'll just say on this. Yeah, I think we completed the discussion, but I don't know if our code base is very unified around it. We still have a huge mix of things, of approaches, and including tooling. And including tests that were abandoned and just don't work and probably need to be removed if they don't work. So yeah, I wonder if this is somewhere between SIG 2 and SIG 3, but I'm leaving it here that at least we should revisit this topic, and we might revisit it and say, okay, we're in good shape. But is there something somebody would want to lead on this and maybe take a deep look at how we use mocking / faking in tests? Kind of evaluate it. Okay, no takers right now, but I'll leave it on the.
Well, I mean, there's the work that Vish, Vic and myself did. Most of it's still stuck in PRs, unfortunately, and I think it ran into the sand because of that. We put in the infrastructure, and then we were converting the tests, and then I know the R2 crunch came, and they were, backburnered. So I don't actually think there's a lot more to do there. I think we can go with what we have, and I think I was going to write a page on in the contributor guide to just document what Vish originally suggested and leave it at that, and see if that was enough for people to go with, because like there's the amount of codes there is not huge, to cover.
This is
So,
specifically
that's what I thought.
for the.
Sorry. I
No,
don't
no, go
have
ahead.
a Andrew's thing, but so Liam, that's what I was saying. I thought you and Vish already did a bunch of work in this area. So maybe we just, like you said.
I'd like to just run with that for R3 and see how we get on. And, if it doesn't fit people, there's nobody, that's good. That's fine too. But it might be better than there's a lot of code there with no coverage at all. So if people are writing new code and they want to do coverage, it's something. It's probably better than starting from nothing. So I mean, I wouldn't say completed, but it's probably good enough as a first cut at it. So
yeah, I wonder if there's if we start to establish more kind of coding guidelines and testing guidelines, there could be a wiki page that kind of explains our basic philosophy and points you to examples.
That's exactly what I was going to write in the contributor guide. But I just wanted to get 1 or 2 PRs through so that we could, validate it ourselves before we published it. Anyway, so maybe people can look at the PRs. We can. I know I have one up. Peter has one up. I think Yeah, we can talk to Vish as well. He was going to do some work there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, you know what? Let's wait for Vish on this because he did a lot of work and we can circle back with him.
Yeah, but I think the PR is that people just review them. I mean, there's the PR that I did that's there since before Christmas. So I mean, and I've asked a number of times for people to review it.
Yeah.
And it's not that big, yeah.
Right. Okay. So
So I mean, that was probably the main hold up was we couldn't get the PRs through. So you know,
yeah.
after a while, one gets moves on to some other work, you know.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Okay, we probably spent too much time on this. This NESPIC topic here, I mentioned that it'll be part of the porch alternative revolution discussion, right? How we organize controllers, CRDs. 3 more items I added here. So I wonder if we need a scalability task force. I have concerns, right? The task force, I think, at least needs to be able to establish some criteria and testing methodologies, right? How do we even test Nephio at scale? We have no data, right? And this includes, we have a little bit of data from Google internally, but we don't really know Nephio right now, what it can even do. If somebody asks us for numbers, we have none. Right? And I think this is becoming more of a concern, as the project is maturing. This is, yes, it's a draft. Yes, it's a reference implementation. But if this is going to be used in production, we need answers. So I think SIG2 is the best place to talk about it, right? Because they're very technical plus architecture aspects. So yeah, I'm just putting this as a line item. Something to discuss at some point. 2 more issues I put in were, hey, let's fix our logging mess. Go itself is extremely messy with logging. We use Kubernetes uses its own klog. We tend to use Logger, which is the worst implementation of logging I've ever seen in my life. As Wim points out, and Go 1.21, they introduced slog, which is not only structured logging, but also uses an interface instead of a struct. So yeah, there's a library that I created called common log that kind of works with everything. It's kind of like a VLF4J in the Java world where you can use any API in any implementation, basically. So if you unify all your APIs around common log, you can switch the backend to use slog, standard logging, klog, and also journal D. So you can also log for journal D2 services. So you have kind of one API on top of everything, and it's structured as well. So yeah, maybe we can have like a session, a presentation of different options, and at least decide something for our code base because it's a mess. Not only is it a mess in terms of which logging APIs we're using, but our logging philosophies are so different. If you do structured logging, you have to have a clear idea of which attributes you put into structures, and everybody seems to do whatever they want. So I think we need standards for that could go feed back into the contributor guide that Liam is working on. The tiniest topic I have here is the last one. So in a lot of our code, we read something that I call ARD, agnostic raw data, which is it is a combination of maps, structs, integers, strings, stuff like that, right? And lists organized, right? And we represent this data usually at YAML as YAML these days. But even Kubernetes originally was JSON based and not YAML based. It eventually kind of evolved to mostly support YAML, but it still supports JSON. The point is we deal a lot with these structures that we read and write, and working with structures like that in Go is painful, right? Dynamic languages like JavaScript and Python, it's very easy. JSON, I mean, the J there is for JavaScript, right? That's the native way that JavaScript uses to represent its data structure. So it's almost trivial to use in JavaScript. And Python is very easy. These things get converted into hash maps and lists. In Go, it's extremely painful. So I have created a library that can make that much more easier to work with. And I can present it and we can see if it will make life easier for us. So yeah, I think that that's the list of the future here. As I said, some of these are more higher priority than others. But I think all of these are lower priority to the things we have here, right? Okay, we have a few minutes left. What do you guys feel about, say, the meeting even next week? Should we start discussing the porch issues? We can do that, right? Here's an agenda for next week. Valentine's Day. What do you think we should tackle first? Silence.
Quick run through the roadmap. Quick run through the roadmap, maybe. I don't know if that's useful. I know it's there for everyone to read, but just so we get a kind of a standing start.
Nephew roadmap or the porch roadmap you're talking about?
Porch roadmap. Sorry, porch
Oh,
roadmap.
okay.
Sorry, is that
Yeah,
is that-
I'd be happy to, let me just double check that I'll be.
whenever you're available? Sorry, John. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this,
See, the thing that I think we should do personally, I mean, this is important, right? But on one hand, we should, if you want to avoid the R3 or the R2 churn problem, we first need to organize ourselves around R3. Because we can discuss all the stuff, right? But we are going to have the same challenge in R3. So I think the first thing we should do is organize ourselves around R3 and what we are going to handle and what yeah. First of all, there is all this parallel activity going on, but at some point, I think people are expecting us to deliver something. And we have to see how do we structure ourselves around that properly in order to, yeah, get something out of the door at the end of the day.
Okay.
may I suggest, actually, I think that I have another meeting, like I probably can't miss. So why don't we schedule the porch thing as a special session for those people who are really interested? We can record it, and I can do it Monday,
So
eight.
John, I actually do think practically everybody here would be interested. I wonder if we could do this in this meeting, because I think it is
That's
Yeah,
fine.
maybe scratch it from the February 14th
Yeah.
if John's not available, but yeah, we can reschedule. Yeah, sorry.
And then February 21st, I'm probably on vacation. Depending if I have enough days. So like, if we need to do it before, I don't know what your time frame is, like, but. I
no,
could do
we
it
have
the-
other things on that we can go through. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, maybe we plan the 28th.
Okay, I'm penciling you in.
Okay.
Okay, so let's put maybe for next week then some other topic. I mean, I can go over my my ready POC. I think I might need more than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think I think for these type of topics, 30 minutes will not be enough. That's my experience.
Okay. Okay, so Wim, do you think maybe we can do overall planning for R3? Do you think that will take the whole hour, kind of? Because maybe you can explain more what you intend by it?
I mean, I think we are all have probably to say something into it, but so, okay, we have this, so we have to have this Friday's meetings, right? So we probably need to track, how do we agree that we take on some work? There is all kinds of stuff there. I can come up with a list of bullet points. And maybe other people can add them as well, right? So, but for me, it's like if we say, okay, go to do this POC, right? We should, from my perspective, I think we should have something on our board that basically tracks and takes these items into pieces and basically says, okay, this is what we are going to do, and somehow track all of that stuff, right? So if we don't do any of this, my fear is that in May we are there and say, okay, now we need to deliver on R3 and we have nothing, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also comes down to how many people are actually available to work on things, you know? I mean,
Correct,
there's,
correct.
there's a little bit, I haven't been attending as many of the SIG 1 meetings recently, but there's a lot being asked for, but I'm not entirely sure that there's that many resources or people or whatever to do it, you know. I know it's very hard to ask people to commit, but you want to, it should be good to have a general idea of people's availability for things, you know. That'll very quickly tell you what you can and can't do.
Okay, well, I think this is a good idea. Let's take next week's meeting. Wim, if you want to lead that, we can really raise all the topics and create at least a list of things we need to decide on. And yeah,
Sure.
I think that you're right. That could easily take the full hour.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, I think we have a rough plan for the next few meetings, at least. And we'll go back to today's list here to keep pulling in items moving forward. And of course, everybody, there's a note here at the top of the agenda. Any member is welcome to add agenda items for any day, right? It doesn't mean we'll accept it necessarily, right? But you can add agenda items, and you know, we might move them around. Yeah, so feel free to raise anything or to highlight something that you think is more urgent and you feel like we need to discuss soon. And yeah, maybe take some time to look over this list of agenda items and see where you can contribute. You know, if you can do a demo of Argo or a demo of Flux and kind of teach us what it does. You know, I think there's a lot of stuff here that people are passionate about, interested in, and, you know, can take a look. All right. So we're just in time. I think we accomplished what I was hoping we would for today, at least looking forward. So thanks again, everybody, for your work in the last few weeks. Rest a little bit, and we'll keep moving. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
Have a
Thanks
great
a
day.
lot. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.